So because of the fact that a lot of the stuff we're going to be doing is aimed towards hackathons, which we've introduced you to, and part of it's going to be, a lot of the things we're going to be programming are not desktop applications, because that's not feasible for programming something in 30 hours. But what we're going to be doing is programming primarily web apps. But there's two things you have to understand, because we're going to be splitting up the programmers here when we go into hackathons into two groups. One is going to be front end and one is going to be back end. And so those are two different pieces that go into creating a web app. But before you can decide what type of programmer you have to be, you have to understand what front end is and what back end is and how they come together to create a web app. So front end is what I would define as basically the part of the application that the user directly interacts with. So on a web page, that is the physical layout of the page, the HTML, associated CSS. There's going to be some CSS to make everything look pretty, and there's also going to be some JavaScript. And so when you see animations, when you see the physical layout of the web page that you're interacting with, that's front end. That's the JavaScript is doing stuff like animations and cool forms that you can fill out when you fill out a form and put your, when you fill out a form and you put your name in it, your email, and all that stuff. That's all JavaScript, that higher level programming stuff. But there's going to be CSS and there's going to be HTML. So this is the part the user sees and interacts with. This one is much more, this is great for creative people. This is design. This is stuff you get to see that's tangible. You get to design and make it look pretty and use your imagination, which you get to do in all programming, but this is visual. This is good for visual people, creative, people who like art, stuff like that. That's what this is all about. So this is, front end is extremely important, and front end is mostly for websites. When you have websites, just a website versus a web app, a website, I would say, only has the front end, only the part that the user interacts with. There's no intelligence behind the scenes that's making this front end more interesting. But when we move to a web app, take for example, we have a website and you sign into that website. So there's a sign-in page where you're logging in, like Facebook, like Instagram, or something like that. You're signing into the website. That cannot be accomplished just with front end, because all this front end stuff exists on the user's browser. So when you go into Chrome, all this front end stuff is happening in Chrome on your computer. But when you go to sign in, when you go to fill out that login page on the website, where are all those usernames and passwords stored? Where's the code that's taking your input, your username and password that you've inputted, and checking it against the one that you set up a long time ago? Where's all that program and intelligence? That's not front end, that's existing on the web server, and that's what we call back end. So all the code that's doing all that stuff behind the scenes, like checking your username and password, that's when you go to Facebook, that's loading all those posts that people posted. Those posts, what do those exist as? Those posts just exist as a bunch of data stored on a server. So the back end takes all that data stored on the server. So there's database servers that store the data. So you don't really have to worry about this, but there's a bunch of data. The back end code takes that data and translates it into this front end that you see. So back end is more, back end is not as tangible as front end. It's more of an abstraction. It's more of an abstraction. So back end programming is a lot of code that you don't see, but it's the intelligence, it's the brains of the web app. So if you want to do high-level programming that's not visual, you're going to be dealing with a lot of data. You're going to be doing math. You're going to be writing algorithms. You're going to be writing equations and all types of things to format data. You're going to be handling data from the database and trying to figure out how do we translate that data into a website, into the data that the people want to see on the website. So the back end is the brain. It's all the intelligence behind the scenes that makes all this pretty stuff happen. So back end is more high level and abstract. Front end is tangible and creative. And both of them are very useful in creating a web app. But those are kind of the differences. And I laid down, front end is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Very easy to learn languages, easy to understand, and you can get started with them right away. Backend is more of a learning curve. Backend includes things like Python. I don't know if you guys have heard of Python. PHP is a big backend language. Now there's some new ones like Ruby on Rails, and also Go, Google's own language called Go. So these are backend languages, and the possibilities with these languages are much bigger. You can create amazing things with these languages, but they have a harder learning curve, and they're harder to master and to pick up. But once you get started with backend languages, the possibilities are endless. So that's about it. That's front end versus back end.